Hey there everybody, how's it going? Nice to see you again. Ever notice that all the YouTube channels you watch on photography, all the photographers are independently wealthy? Like they have no worries about zipping off to Ecuador and this week and Iceland the next week and whatever. Yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. There's a few exceptions. I mean, you know, of photographers that are just working it, but most of them could do anything they want. Must be a nice feeling. Anyway, so a few things this week. I'm back up near Helix, Oregon, the finished church, because I'm going shopping up in Walla Walla, and it's an overcast day, which is kind of goofy because this time of year, it's like I've said in many other videos, it's usually clear blue skies for months. But I'll take it. Now the forecast is clear blue skies for the next like 3 weeks, but today's an overcast day, so I'm going to take it. So I stopped by this scene here, which there's a shot here, but I haven't gotten it yet. So I think what I might do is take a few images and stitch them together as a pano, that kind of a thing, and we'll see. In the news, a couple interesting things. So Fuji came out with a firmware to fix the autofocus issues, the tracking autofocus issues that they had with the firmware that they released before. That's kind of screwed it up a little bit. And everybody's complaining that Fuji autofocus sucks. You know, let's be honest, Fuji autofocus is really, really good. It's just, it's not as good at tracking as maybe the Sonys are. And we're talking a few percentage points. It's not really that big a deal. So I've always contended that if you really knew what you were doing, you wouldn't really rely on it that much. But whatever, I don't shoot a lot of tracking autofocus, so it doesn't really affect me. I will say this, and I know this for a fact, that the Fuji autofocus and is better than the Sony autofocus in lower light. The Sony gives up in light that's not that dark, and the Fuji does great. And even to a greater extent, the Pentax autofocus. Everybody gives Pentax a hard time for their autofocus, and yeah, I understand it's an older system, but it's extremely accurate. When a Pentax is in focus, it's in focus. And more so than that, a Pentax like the K1 can focus in light that you can't even see in. Which, you know, if that's an attribute that was important to people, they'd make a bigger deal out of it. But you know, people tend to overlook the good points and only point out the bad points. And I get that. I'm guilty of that myself. So anyway, the big problem is, and one of the guys was commenting on another channel, that the problem is everybody's made these videos about how Fuji autofocus isn't as good as 10-year-old Sony cameras. Well, you know, yeah, that's because they screwed up the firmware, right? And now that the firmware has fixed the problem for the most part, those videos are still out there. And that's a shame because the 5th generation Fujis really do a very good job at focusing. This is a completely separate topic. Another thing that's a problem with Fuji, and this is as an old wedding photographer, you know, I used to shoot 40, 50 weddings a year, you know, and when I had weddings scheduled, I had two to three scheduled per weekend. So, and what was always in the back of my mind, and one of the things you think about when you have that kind of a grueling professional photography schedule for events that you have to get the shots at, is that what would I do if my gear got stolen? Well, the answer there is you'd put in an order to B&H and get the stuff, you know, within a couple of days. And if I were still shooting weddings and I were shooting Fuji, I'd be very nervous about that right now. What's up with the supply chain issues? Like Fuji, like get your finger out, man. It's, you know, Sony, Nikon, Canon, for the most part, the supply chain issues are kind of over. But Fuji, the X-T5 isn't in stock, the X100 VI, whatever the hell it is, isn't in stock. And you could expect that. That's got like a, you know, that camera, the X100s went viral because a couple of very rich YouTubers said this is the best camera ever. And who may or may not have known what they were talking about. It's a good camera. But anyway, there's no excuse for the X-T5 to not be in stock. That's ridiculous. and the lenses, they're currently, you know, they constantly go in and out of stock. Now the 70 to 300 millimeter XF is 6 to 8 weeks on B&H. Really, I mean, seriously, that's for a professional photographer, that's kind of unacceptable, because in an emergency, when you need gear, you need it right away, and the stuff should be in stock, or there should be options. You know, I guess you could buy XH2s, but if you were shooting XT5s, whatever. My point is it's just kind of worrying. Is it that big a deal? Not really. It's not a big deal for me because I don't shoot weddings anymore like that. And the last thing I'll talk about before I start photographing is the Pentax 17. Evidently, in the United Kingdom, in Britain, in England, the distributor of Pentax has decided to send Pentax 17s to anyone with a remote interest in Pentax cameras. That's not happened so much in the USA, but it's kind of interesting. And what's also interesting about the Pentax 17, well, first of all, let me say, everybody's saying it's very plasticky. It does have a solid magnesium, not solid, but a cast magnesium top and bottom plate. It's not plastic. So maybe that kind of justifies the $500. I don't know. People say it feels plasticky. The big screw on the side doesn't help to hold the battery, and I get that. But what really is fascinating to me is how everybody is raving about the image quality of half-frame 35 millimeter film. Just makes me wonder, what is it in digital that isn't satisfying people? So I know I shoot film and digital, I get that, but it's also made me realize I'm shooting my Pentax K1 more because it's more satisfying. It's less digital and more film-like. And so maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But hey, shoot what you like. It's all supposed to be fun, and that's what it's all about. So in the month or two since I've been here, the wheat field has turned gold. It's not green anymore, which is really interesting. And this is the first time I've been here on an overcast day. So I'm going to take the old K1 here and see what I can make of that. There's a shot here, I just haven't gotten it yet. I'm thinking maybe panorama, but we'll see. So let me see what I can dial in here. I'm getting f11 200th a second at ISO 100. So another interesting thing about that I've been playing with lately, Pentax has an interesting website, an interesting web page, where they go over all their different creative image styles, whatever they call them. And I didn't know this, but they have one that they call reversal film, and it kind of looks like Velvia. So, you know, the Pentax colors I've always thought they were superior even to Fuji's. And there's very few people that would say that, but or that would know or be able to make a judgment on that. But I would, because I've used Fuji extensively. I've used Pentax extensively. And the Pentax colors are really fantastic. Now, remember, these creative styles only really affect your JPEGs. They don't affect your RAWs. But they do affect your RAWs in the sense that your histogram is based on the JPEG creative style, the contrast you have dialed in. So if you have a very contrasty creative style, it's just something to be aware of. If you shoot in the same creative style all the time, then you kind of get used to what your histogram is doing and what it's telling you, that kind of a thing. If you want the most accurate histogram based upon your RAW file, you'd probably want to shoot in natural or flat. Doesn't look really good on the screen, and you have to tweak the JPEGs afterwards to get them to look like the scene looks with the proper saturation and color and all that, and contrast. So it's something to think about. But But I'll put a link to that Pentax page that describes all their creative image styles in the description below. Enjoy that. So yeah, an overcast day. Who would have thought it in the middle of right at the end of June, beginning of July? Fantastic. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you out here. Have a great one. Bye.